I'll record it and then eventually we'll.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, basically we are third-year students, so we're in our last year of international entrepreneurship, and we are now in a module where we basically it is basically all about global challenges. So there are groups who focus on gender and groups who focus on human rights, and that is actually part of our group. So basically we got the task to do a big research about something that has an impact on human rights in order for us to understand the problems concerning human rights that are ongoing in the world right now. And what we actually, our main focus for Robin and I is actually the impact of technological changes and evolution on human rights. And that's why we also have contact with you right now. And basically, we are going to ask you a few questions about things that we think you might know a lot about, because we did some research on your LinkedIn page and stuff, where you explained what you really are into and what your so yeah, that's basically what we have to do. And this interview, that's also why we would like to record it, is also part of our material in order to prove that we actually make questions via the network of our lecture in order to
I think your internet has lower capacity. I'm starting not to hear you very well.
I'm going to plug in my cable.
But I got the point. To be focused, because human rights are almost everything human activities are involved in. What particularly sort of type of human rights are you researching, or you want to direct the questions to me?
So our main question is actually, so our main research question is how do technological changes affect human rights? And we made some sub questions. Like, my question is concerning about the effect on low wage countries and the evolution in the Western countries and Asia concerning robotization and automatization of processes. And what effects does it have on child labor or the social and economic status of families in the low-wage countries, where now a lot of companies outsource their production to. But we see, I already saw that there's a trend going on that companies are doing reshoring, so bringing back their production from low-wage countries to their own countries, and really invest in technological processes to make it automated. And yeah, so the effects on that. So actually my first question is, do you think that there will be a major technological evolution in the Western countries, resulting in, for example, mass production no longer being outsourced to low-wage countries, so completely eliminating the low-wage countries' production?
And by the way, I'll offer probably more qualitative than quantitative analysis. I don't have statistics at my fingertips, but I'm sure you can find a lot of statistics in United Nations, the conferences they hold on inequality or on economic development. But there are a couple of, let's say, very large trends. One, which you're probably familiar with and you hear all the time, is this separation between China and primarily US, with the Western world sort of, the Western Europe sort of playing a little bit on both sides, but still tilting more toward the US. The separation, it's more related to competition between the countries. What the US particularly noticed during the COVID, that they lost a lot of primary and basic production capabilities. So there are nearshoring and reshoring and bringing the capabilities back to primarily to Mexico for lower wages, so cheaper labor, but also to the US and Canada, which, by the way, I'm sure you're familiar. They have something similar to the European Community agreements in terms of free movement of goods and people. So that's sort of the trend. On the technology side, there is a clear trend, and if you did the research already, it's sometimes referred as Industry 4.0. And Industry 4.0 is the introduction of technologies which are related to cloud, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, robotics, and automation. And I'm sure you hear on the news a lot about that. So this technology in particular is considered the fourth industrial revolution because it really not only starts to reduce the amount of effort, the first revolution being the steam engine, the second revolution is the deployment of electrical motors, which offer mobility, the separation between energy production and consumption. But the third revolution introduced computer, which was more office automation or office support. The fourth revolution actually replaces humans. So I'm speculating that this trend of reshoring and will also replace expensive laborers, expensive workers with automation, robots. And by the way, the robots don't need to look like humans, right? They can be very task specific, like a cook robot will not look like a chef in the kitchen.
Yeah, like a Belgian academic once said that that we don't need to fear the robotization because one high-tech job creates 5 more normal jobs. Is that something you agree on, or you have another opinion concerning that matter?
I can speculate, probably not having the same amount of wisdom as the professor you mentioned, but I think this is purely speculative. There are old economic data that belongs more to the second and third revolution, right? In that cases, you had really a lot of auxiliary support. So for instance, if you had a highly paid factory worker, car industry, for instance, in the US, where they were unionized, yes, you have restaurants going on, you have daycares, you have schools. So it creates an economic development. Rhetorically, I'll ask the question if the other 5 jobs will not be other 5 robots. So it does create jobs, but I'm not sure if it's jobs for humans and for salaried or medium to high income humans.
Now that we are talking about like the potential loss of jobs, do you think that AI and technological evolution, at the moment people speculate about the fact that it could only endanger the low-end jobs, for example, the warehouse workers. But do you think that it could also endanger highly paid jobs that we see at the moment that are not specifically endangered right now?
It's already doing it. So I'll give you a simple example. Doctors, especially doctors dealing with clinical imaging, X-rays, CT scans, MRI. Already the files are sent for analysis by doctors in another country. Again, I don't have an article in my mind, but you can search. So the job is sent from US to India. The Indian doctor gives the prognosis or the results, and the American doctor checks it out and signs it. So yes, this is just one example. Other examples, for a long time, software development in developed country was moved to primarily to India, where hardware and products development was moved more to China, Vietnam. So the answer is it's already happening and will continue to happen.
Talking about the health system and the health, the technological evolution over there, do you think this is a good thing, or do you think that stuff like hospitals should keep their human aspect, because obviously you're working with people who might be really sick or special things?
It's an inviting question. It sounds simple, but I think you can approach it from different perspectives. So first perspective will be economic efficiency, which means, of course, you try to optimize the cost, you try to maximize the profits. So if you look on that perspective, automation, it's a good thing because it increases the GDP per capita. You know, it increases the wealth of nations as the costs go lower. It's deflationary, if you want. While if you look at this from a different perspective, is what structural changes have to happen in the labor market, or even in the economic market. Like, are you going to give the unemployed people a wage, right, an income, so they can live as the jobs become automated? So you have the human factor that it's much more unclearer, because fewer people can perform more jobs. You know, go back to the examples, the X-rays, right, sent to India. You can have 10 times more productivity per American doctor. So I think it's a question of perspective, not a simple answer. In general, automation and technological evolution reduces the amount of human labor. We know that from agriculture, we know that from industry, right? For instance, we don't have any more secretaries from the third industry revolution, right? When computers replaced secretaries, and we're doing our own emails and messages and so on. So I don't think there is a binary answer to the question. It's a question of perspective. But again, you cannot stop the technological evolution just because it automates highly paid, highly qualified jobs.
So I also still have a question about the low-wage countries. Like, I also saw that you're focused on black swan risks on your LinkedIn page. Do you think a black swan is the technological evolution can be a black swan concerning the economical status of families in low-wage countries that depend on, for example, a child that goes to a factory to support another child to go into education? Or can you also see it like a white swan that eliminates the child labor because the mass production is being moved back to the Western countries? It's not a simple question.
Child labor, it's also from a human rights perspective, there is a clear answer. Child labor is bad. Children should be in schools, educated, and so on. What I read and what I've seen in developing countries, underdeveloped especially, child labor is still sustenance for the family. So if you eliminate a child job, it's actually the family, it's economically worse. So again, and this is a little bit more complex situation. You have to look at what in economics you call unintended consequences. You can close a polluting factory and put out of work 10,000 people. Is it good? Is it bad? Short term, it's clearly bad. Longer term, if you do it in a if I can use the term in a human fashion, you requalify the employees first and you close the factory second, so they find new jobs, better paid, cleaner jobs. But you have this tendency of short-term fixes that governments tend to put in place, and you end up with unintended consequences economically, right?
Yeah, so if you then look like the company wants to present themselves like environmental friendly, child friendly, and so on, but actually because they eliminate the production there, they're making it worse for the society over there.
Exactly. You don't buy coffee from a South American country because they use child labor. Economically, the country is going, they may have, I don't know, 10% of their GDP on coffee and products. You end up actually with the worst economic problem for the country, for the parents, for the children. I'm not saying that I support or I really despise this child labor. Exploitation, right, of children, but that's a personal view. But when you come with a solution, you have to be a little bit wiser than saying, okay, from tomorrow you close the plantation.
Yeah, but that's what's going on with a lot of companies. They are really eliminating their production over there, and instead they maybe should invest in companies and production over there, and maybe automatize it over there, so the country can develop more and child labor
Sure.
will in the future be eliminated.
Sure. Make not the children, make the parents the supervisors of the farm. But again, you deal with a transition which is probably 1 or 2 generations between physical labor and let's say office work and more toward. So a lot of companies try to be green. I'm dealing a lot of this greenwashing, for instance, if you're familiar with the term. Making and they make these decisions that at the end are resulting for short-term and mid-term negative consequences. For instance, take another example: electric vehicles. If you don't produce electricity with other means than hydrocarbons, right, with oil and gas, then you don't solve completely the problem of pollution. You move the pollution from the center of the city to the edge of the city where you produce electricity, wherever you produce electricity. You didn't solve the problem, you just moved the problem, and now cities are clean. So you fix the problem, but you didn't fix the environment impact.
Yeah, and do you believe that digitalization can help to enforce human rights on a global scale, or is that an opinion you don't share?
Long time ago, I don't believe that, yes, as the internet was not manipulated, used in a very negative way, controlled by governments. I think at this point in time, the balance, unfortunately, is more harming human rights than helping human rights. I think it still helps human rights because information circulates faster, but there are no consequences. Now we know more about the lack of human rights in countries in China or even in the US. US tries to play like we are the good guys. So what? So what is the consequence? It's not very it's not changing the attitude of people toward human rights and the situations, right? We have refugees in Europe. We have illegal immigrants in the US. So
Yeah.
So I think technology is more neutral than anything else in that respect. We know more, but we don't do more.
And do you think that like the rapid deployment of technological stuff such as finger ID or face ID into phones could help, could like lead to a more negative impact on human rights? Because obviously you give so much data these days to these big companies, and when you say, like for example,
So
big companies are owned by the government.
First thing, I won't even go into the ownership of the company because it can be private or public or government owned. I would separate the technology from the way governments and people use it or deem acceptable to use it. What I'm saying is fingerprints technology or iris, the eye checking and so on, it's used in India for disbursements for the very poor population. So ID is good in the sense that you know that the money gets in the hand of the man or woman that needs it, that it's really, because there was a lot of corruption going on. So here is an example where IDs are good. I'm born in a country that was communist at the time, Romania. And I would say that the less the government knows about you, the more chances you have to do okay in the country, right? Because there is arbitrary action from the government, right? And the technology allows a lot more now in terms of surveillance that you had only with an ID card or on a paper or a piece of paper. So again, the technology is neutral. I think what we need to look in terms of human rights is where the governments will stop to abuse it.
That's like also something we're seeing in China, like with the social point system and the AI-based controlling of the government of their population. It's actually misuse of technology and really harming human rights. So it can go.
But I would say that the technology is equally used in most developed countries, China, US, Western Europe. I think where it's the line of abuse of the information where the countries are different, rather than the fact that they do collect and they have face recognition in the US. Just if you look on CNN or Fox, whatever channel you prefer, you'll see that in 5 minutes after an attack, unfortunately, like school attacks and so on, they know the name and the face of the perpetrator. There are cameras everywhere. So I think the boundary is legal more than it is technological. I won't blame technology for human rights violations. It's people and governments doing it, not the technology. Until you get a drone over your head and it shoots you, it's not the technology.
Yeah. So I maybe have one final question on my part. So you yourself are an academic. In your opinion, will society be able to catch up with the rapidly changing technology? And if you look at like the low-end job disappear, can education adjust at the same rate as technology is changing? And so can education change at the same pace as the technology? And
I'll sidestep the question of technology, because education is about knowledge. It's about people's ability to make decisions based on their knowledge, their specialty, and so on. So yes, technology helps disseminate information. I don't think any technology, probably from the Greeks and Romans, which they had sort of the not very different than our modern schools, like a professor in the classroom and she or he, usually in all times, teaching the lesson. There is no way to verify how much the people really learn and can apply what they learn. So I think, yes, technology can provide better tools. I don't think the schools are yet at the point where they understand the learning process better than probably they understood it with Industrial Revolution 2.0 or 3.0. They still teach in the same way, trying to give you information, and you have to process and come up with knowledge on your own.
So you don't think that some educational systems are running behind the changing world?
I think the educational system did not evolve with technology too much. Like the fact that I use Zoom with my students allows for more communication. So allows exactly like what we're doing right now, Robin. We're having a dialogue, right? But the technology doesn't allow me to pick up what knowledge we transfer. Now you go back to your class, you're going to study, you're going to look at it, and you'll come up with a conclusion. And I offer you a few data points or ideas or references. But I don't think it really changed drastically than having a face-to-face meeting. Okay, costs change, dissemination change, would probably never met if it was not Zoom or having the opportunity, but it didn't change the fundamentals of the educations, which is knowledge transfer.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I don't really have any questions anymore. I don't know if Felix wants to add something.
Yeah, I have one last question. It regards the enrollment of 5G. I also saw that you are doing a lot of research regarding this subject. And I was wondering, how do you first of all see the enrollment of 5G? Like how long do you think it will take for a lot of countries to have deployed it, and for the normal people, let's say, like us students, work people, to actually use this technology?
The deployment in public area, is still questionable from a financial viewpoint. The technology exists for a few years already. It's I would say it's mature already, but what you have is really what they call it a killer application or a killer business case. So the technology gives you higher speeds, and the technology, by the way, it's only about connectivity. 3G, 4G, 5G are connectivity technologies. They are not really offering new services. The key difference between 3G to 4G and 4G to 5G evolution was actually the invention by Steve Jobs of the smartphone. So the device drove the network, the demand for network. Now, if you have 5G with bad coverage, is not going to change almost anything. If your phone runs at a higher speed and you download a movie in 5 seconds or 10 seconds, I challenge you to watch that movie in 20 seconds and tell me what's about. You know, like if you download a 2 hours movie in a very short time, you physically cannot consume that data in the same amount of time with the download. So to answer the question, the public 5G is driven economically. Where 5G makes more sense, it's inside the factories where you need higher capacity to move robots, to use, artificial intelligence, robots, virtual reality, and so on the factory floor. That's where it makes much more sense to me. And I'll
Okay.
sort of close as a question. How would you use 5G differently than 4G? What do you need
I
it
think,
for? What do you need it for?
yeah, what you said really blew my mind, actually. Like the fact that you can download the movie very quickly. You still need the 2 hours of time to watch the movie, and that's something, yeah. Because I wanted to ask a follow-up question, but you also like kind of discussed it with Robin already, talking about the educational system. Because I thought, okay, maybe 5G, I don't really know a lot about it, but I knew that the speed was significantly better. So I thought, okay, maybe 5G could be an opening in world connectivity in order to fight global challenges that we see these days, such as education.
Your connection, I cannot hear you well. Please repeat.
Wait, I'm going to put my video off.
Yes,
Maybe
Felix.
this will
Good.
help.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, you talked about educational systems with Robin, about like how you don't see that much of change due to technological evolution. And I was wondering, when I was thinking about my question, I thought, okay, 5G gives you a way more rapid speed. Couldn't it be used to continue connectivity in order to attack global challenges like, for example, the educational parts in the third world countries? Because we see there are a lot of problems regarding education with the more poor countries, because they don't have access to as much as we have. But I was thinking, okay, maybe 5G, because you have a better speed, it could give them a possibility to have better connectivity and have better options. But I don't know if that's a good follow-up question, because what you said, like I said, really
I'll
answered
clarify,
that.
Felix. It's a very logical question, but here it's what I observed traveling through, especially through Latin America, Asia, and so on. You have to start with the basic economics when you look at this question. So 5G is a more expensive technology. It's more complex. It's newer, and so on. So developing countries will be the first, as usual, to move from 3G to 4G to 5G. The problem in poor countries is you don't have coverage. You can do a lot of things with 3G even, which is much cheaper because it's practically an obsolete technology. Definitely you can do it with 4G. You can have Zoom calls, you can have fairly complex applications for a classroom. But if you don't have coverage, if you don't have the the fundamental economics for the country, where people live, I don't know, on poverty line, I think is $2 a day, but let's say they live on $10 a day, they don't have budget, and telecom companies will not deploy commercially 5G to make money. Which leaves the government, and the government is poor because their tax base is small. So there are fundamental economic problems that technology first cannot deliver because it's more expensive, 5G than 4G, more complex to deploy more than really to operate. So you have to start from the fundamental economics of those countries. And I'll give you another data point. Look at inequality in the US. I just did it with a friend. GDP per capita in the South, it's about $40,000. Well, GDP per capita in Washington is $200,000. It's 5 times more. Inside a developed, industrialized country and so on, you still have these regional disparities. Take this to South America and divide it by 10, right? You have some cities which will have $200 GDP per capita, and some poor rural areas which will have, I don't know, $40. So the technology doesn't solve the economic problem in general. In some way, it costs more, and it actually can be a participant in increasing inequality, the left behind countries and people.
But I once read an article in which was stated that like Africa skipped the full deployment of telephone lines and the telephone network and immediately implemented like GSM and wireless networks. So you don't think that, for example, Africa, the continent, can be the first to fully deploy 5G and maybe leave Europe and Western parts behind on that aspect?
It's highly unlikely, although there is innovation, major innovation happening in Africa. For instance, it's something we didn't talk at all about inequality, but part of inequality is inequality in the financial system. And for instance, Africa, Kenya started a system called M-Pesa, M-P-E-S-A, that now covers many countries, and it's using a basic 2G phone to transfer money. And that's very important, as people use it for small payments. They don't need to have physical money. It's more secure. They can buy cheap insurance. Governments can give them some funds. So again, I'll reduce it to 5G will not solve Africa's economic problems. So even if a donor country gives it in for free and operates it, the structural economic problems will not change.
Yeah, but like here we hear a lot of news about China investing loads of money into Africa and really give out big loans and start developing the countries. So is it possible that China supports the 5G network and really focus on Africa and implements it all over?
Yes, but in my opinion, and I know it's contrary to maybe humanistic thinking, but Africa doesn't need 5G at the moment, even if China gives them 5G. And you said another key word, it's a loan. And the loan has a political string attached, it has financial obligations. So if you look at the sort of the investment profile, the ideal investment profile, if you want to lift the country, you start with the younger generation, with education, and so on. 5G, as we discussed, is not going to be a major enabler of education. 4G is good enough. Is the system, is the corruption, is the availability of professors, and so again, you don't solve a complex problem by changing one parameter. And 5G is good. It's a better technology than 4G. But if you don't use it for creating more value than 4G, go back to 4G. If 4G doesn't create more value than 3G, go to 3G. Right? Let me end with a metaphor. You won't build the 8 lanes highway if the cars, there is 1 car per 100 households.
Yeah,
it's a waste of resources. You better build all the roads in the country so people can buy cars and move goods, instead of building a super highway in the middle of a desert.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's clear. Yeah. So I don't really have any questions anymore. I don't know about Felix.
No, that was my last question as well.
Okay, so I'll stop the recording. I have your email address. I'll put it on Google. Do you need the video or only the audio?
I think
or both.
I think the video.
I'm sorry, Felix.
I think both.
Okay. Well, the video will have also there. So I'll upload it, and and send it to you probably this afternoon my time at least.
Yeah, thank you.
That's very good.
Okay, and you have my email if you really need clarifications.
Yeah.
Okay, good luck with
Thank
your
you again.
studies. I hope we touch on a couple of
Bye.
opinions and views that maybe you are not as orthodox as you wish.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting. So we want to thank you and good luck with your.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Felix. Very nice to meet you both.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.